यूपीएससी के अकॉर्डिंग इम्पॉर्टेंट कंटेंट पाने के लिए ईजी क्लासेस को ज़रूर सब्सक्राइब कर लें और बेल आइकन भी प्रेस कर दें जिससे कि नोटिफिकेशन मिलता रहे।
Yes, good afternoon everyone. Study we have been discussing our study we have been discussing the relation of ethics with other disciplines, and earlier in a very first lecture we have discussed the definition, determining and all that in very first lecture, and in next lecture, in second lecture, we have discussed the relation of ethics with other disciplines like psychology, political science, economy, metaphysics, theology, religion and all that. So, now we are going to move the next topic, the psychological basis of ethics, and just try to understand what are the psychological basis of ethics. Psychological basis of ethics, and the very first thing we will try to understand what is moral and what is non-moral, and even there are many kinds of judgment. If you want to know, there are the factual judgments, the holy judgments, moral judgments, logical judgments, judgments of appreciation. These are the main kinds of judgments. The holy judgments are used in religion, logical judgments are used in logic, moral judgments are used in ethics, judgments of appreciation are used in aesthetics, and descriptive judgments are used in natural sciences. So, they have a different nature and they have a different distinct nature, and they describe the different distinct things, distinct features. But right now we are going to discuss what is moral and what is non-moral action first. Moral judgment we will discuss later on. Right now, what is moral and what is immoral, and then we will discuss further the classifications, moral and non-moral. And first thing we will try to know what is non-moral, and the very first thing, moral and non-moral are the ethical or moral qualities. It's ethical or moral qualities. Ethical or moral qualities, and the action or the judgment which have moral quality is moral, or which has devoid of moral quality is non-moral. And the actions of what are non-moral, what actions or what activities or what phenomena are known as non-moral. The very first thing, the natural activities, the natural phenomena like flood, hurricane. So, first thing, What is non-moral? Just first we will discuss non-moral. Non-moral, when we discuss, the very first thing is a natural phenomena. Yeah, natural phenomena. So natural phenomena like the hurricane, like flood, like drought, these are the things which are beyond the pale of morality. We do not call them moral. These activities, these functions, these phenomena have a divide of moral quality. They are non-moral activities, non-moral phenomena. Why non-moral phenomena? Because we cannot evaluate them. Later on, when we will discussing the Kant, then we will discuss what is within the ambit of morality. Kant is a man who have made a soft distinction between, who have made a demarcation of morality and soft distinction between moral and non-moral, and even the areas which can be studies in morality, in ethics, and which the subject matter which are beyond the morality. So this is Kant. It was the Kant who have made this demarcation, but that will be discussed later on with Kant. Right now we are discussing just only thing, the very first thing, this natural phenomena is beyond the pale of morality. Why it is beyond the pale of morality? We will discuss with Kant. Second thing, animal activities, activities of animals. Activities of animals also, activities of animals are also non-moral. Their activities cannot be called moral. Why? Because they have divide of reason. They do not have reason. They don't think. Their actions are not deliberate. They don't take they don't take decision consciously and deliberately. So animal activities are also divide of moral quality. And what is again non-moral? A non-moral is insane person, idiots, children, their action, children, the action of children, and idiots and insane person, their action are also divide of moral quality. So they are non-moral. We cannot make responsible for a child committing anything wrong. And idiots are also considered in this category. An insane person who are mentally retarded, who are not mentally retarded, are stupid kind of fellow. They are not, their action is not considered morally, because they are not wise enough, or they are not intelligent enough, or they are not rational enough, better to say, to examine what they are, to do something with rationality. So children, and even the action which are, suppose a person is done by an adult man, but under pressure. So any action under pressure is also under pressure, or any external pressure, under coercion, under pressure, under threat. These action also not considered as, it's also not considered as the moral action, because the action is not, this is not own choice. That's not its own, that's not the agent's own choice. So under pressure action which has been done under pressure has also the divide of moral quality. And the action, the hypnotic suggestion, the action which are done in hypnotic suggestion, hypnotic, the action which is done under hypnotic suggestions, and this is also not suggestions, this is also not subject, this is also divide of moral quality. So it is also divide of moral quality. And many other actions like your hypnotic action and under pressure, under pressure, when you say that the coercion, threat, punishment, etc., and hypnotic suggestions, some others, there are some other activities, human activities, which are considered as, for example, spontaneous action, any strong emotions, or spontaneous action, accidental action are also accidental action, and spontaneous action. Spontaneous action is also taken as, is not taken as taken as divide of morality, divide of moral quality. Okay, so these are the actions which have been defined as beyond the morality. And so what is moral then? Moral is the action which is done by a rational man, adult rational man. First thing, the man should be adult. He should be rational, rational, and the action must be done by the free choice. So the action done by adult rational person with freedom of will, or with free choice. So with freedom of will. So it's a free action of an adult, of an rational adult man. And in a short, again we can say what is moral? Moral is, so one we can say the moral is a voluntary action as well as the habitual action. So voluntary and habitual action have moral quality. Voluntary means the action voluntary, and habitual. So voluntary and habitual action have the moral quality. So voluntary means the action which is taken, which is done with deliberate choice and with decision, with choice. Okay, and that is intensely and deliberately. I am coming on it. And what is a habit? Again, the habitual action are also repeated action. Also they are also that has been decided action. That is decided action. Once agent decides some action and does it repeatedly, then that becomes fixed as a habit. Then it becomes fixed as a habit. So when it becomes fixed as a habit, before becoming a fixed as a habit, it has been taken many times. It has been repeated many times, and this decision has been taken many times. As you know, the definition of habit is the disposition of will. So it's a disposition of will, and so disposition of will. And again we will come on this habit, and now we are going to discuss what is voluntary action. So now we have to discuss what is voluntary action. So what is voluntary action? What's the definition? The first and foremost, we have to understand the very first thing, that the voluntary action is the action which is done, which is intentionally, which is done intentionally and deliberately. Intentionally and deliberately, and the action deliberately. So action which is done intentionally and deliberately is known as voluntary action. So any free agent, any adult rational man, when perform any action with deliberation and with intention, and both terms are very important. Deliberation has a complete process, and intention has also complete meaning. And so we will discuss both of them. And now, so the definition of voluntary action is, it's a action of a free adult man, free adult rational man with free choice, intentionally and deliberately. And in short, we can say the action done by an agent deliberately and intentionally. Okay, so deliberately and intentionally done by an agent. This is voluntary action. Okay, and now the question is, what is this? How this voluntary action happens? It has, just try to understand. It has three aspects. First one is known as, it has three stages. First mental stage, then bodily stage, then consequences. So this voluntary action has three stages. What are these three stages? First stage is your mental stage. This mental stage, as the mental stage, just try to understand. The first thing, there is a kind of want. First thing, there is a spring of action. Why there is a spring of action? This spring of action is because of want. There is spring of action. Try to understand. So there is a spring of action, and this spring of action is because of the want. It's a craving of want, and this craving of want may be any kind of want. It may be any kind of want, but this want very soon is converted into desire. Once the want is converted into desire, this desire may be anything actual, or it can be actual, or it can be ideal. So this want, or this want may be the appetite or instinct. First thing, there is a want, and there is this want, then it is either appetite or instinct. Either it's appetite or instinct. And but very soon there is a mental process, free choice converts into desire, and once it is converted into desire, now this desire may be kind of, now we will discuss this desire. Now this desire is, it has a particular motive, it has a particular object, and with the very first thing, this desire is either ideal or actual. It may be ideal or actual. May be ideal or actual. Now, if it is ideal, if it is actual, then it may be either the appetite or the instinct, and if it is ideal, then it may be the the requirement, craving for anything, whether it is moral, aesthetic, or logical, or intellectual, we say. So it can, if it is ideal, it can have three kinds. It can have, it may be the moral, or it may be the intellectual, or it may be the aesthetic, moral, intellectual, aesthetic. So it can be either of them. If it is ideal, one can think about something, some ideal, and if it is actual, then of course, either it is appetite or it is instinct. So it will be connected with either appetite or instinct. And as far as appetite is concerned, what is appetite? Kind of the thirst, kind of the hunger, kind of the demand, kind of the want. And what is instinct? Again, instinct is some driving force. Some actions are still instinctual in a man, and some actions are still instinctual in animals. So instinct as well as appetites, both of the things you understand. And now, so this is desire. What happens when, and again the desire has a certain object. What is desire? Desire is a rational process, mental process. It's a mental process, decided by the mind. It is decided by the mind, And once there is a desire has a certain object. Now agent knows what does he want. So it has a certain object, it has a motive, so it has a certain end, and desire has a certain end. So when it has a certain end, this is known as a motive. This is known as motive. And now, so because there is a motive, sometimes if there is a certain motive, then it's fine. But if there are many motives, for example, suppose one is feeling hunger, and he has a certain, now he has converted it into, first he feels a want. Spring of action comes from want, and then want is coming from appetite. And now this appetite is he feels hungry, and now then this message goes to mind, and mind thinks for something. Mind, the agent wants something to have and to satisfy this quench, this demand, this want, and for the sake of satisfaction of this demand, this want, he has a certain, in his mind here, he has a certain end, a definite end, a particular object. Suppose he has a particular, he has thought a particular object, like particular restaurant over there. He has thought a particular kind of dish. Okay, but but suppose he may think various kinds of motives. He can think that he should have this particular dish, or that particular dish, or various kind of dishes, came in his mind, and now he when he thinks that there are various kinds of motives, then obviously there is a conflict among the motives. And if there is a conflict among the motives, then comes the question of deliberation. So now see, and once you say there is a motive, this motive includes also the means. So motive is the end, but of course he has to also search about the means. So intention includes both, will come on it. So your desire includes both action, voluntary action, and now desire has a motive, will come on it. And now action has, your moral action has motive as well as intention. So we will come on it. Now let us discuss this desire. And our desire, either it may be actual or ideal. We have taken the example of actual desire, of hunger, of food. And now, but there is a conflict among motives. Then question arises about deliberation. Then he thinks about what is deliberation. Then comes deliberation. And what is deliberation? What happens when he has a conflict of motives? He has many motives. Suppose he has many motives. Then what happens? Then he thinks about all the motives and weighs them in a balance and perceives pros and cons of the motives, or of, you can say, of the action. Now then he has to take action. And now this voluntary action, we are discussing this voluntary action. And now in voluntary action, now we are going from desire to action. So once it is a matter of action and once it is a matter of decision, then he goes to deliberation. And now for deliberation, he chooses the end as well as the means and weighs them on a balance and examines all pros and cons. So deliberation is a weighing of the action, weighing of the motives, weighing of the different motives, and weighing of different motives and examining the pros and cons of that particular action. So examines all pros and cons, weighs in a balance, and decide one motive. And if then he decides one motive. And once the motive is decided, that's known as a choice or decision. That's known as a choice or decision. Then comes the decision. So now what we have understood? The very first thing we have understood in voluntary action, the very first thing you have to we have understood. What was the first thing? A spring of action. Okay. Then this spring of action comes from want. Want comes from your appetite. Either appetite, either it is intellectual or ideal, your appetite or instinct. This one, if it either it is ideal or it is actual. If it is actual, then it comes from the appetites and instincts, and if it is ideal, then it comes from moral and intellectual. It can be moral, intellectual or aesthetic. So this is ideal, and then this one is converted into desire, and this is the explanation of desire. And then desire has a motive. Now he decides some motive, and once the motive is decided, then fine. In a simple action, in simple course of action, once the motive is decided, he chooses. Now the agent enters into action, takes action, performs action. But in a case of many motives, again, if there is a conflict among motives, and if there is a conflict among motives, then what happens? Then he deliberates, and once he deliberation means weighing of pros and cons of a particular motive, pros and cons of all motives, and to decide one and reject others and reject the rest. So he decides one of them and rejects the rest. So that's the deliberation. And after deliberation, what happens? If again he has to perform the action right now, then fine. If he has to perform the action immediately, then he takes decision. Then at least deliberation reaches to choice. Then it reaches to choice. This is a kind of choice. And now, so he has chosen something. Almost he has reached to decision. That's why it is also known as decision. But still there is one step. Why? Still, if it has to perform right now, then fine. Otherwise, he can postpone his decision. You know that if it postpone a decision, then it comes a resolution, not decision. Now he has reached a choice. Once he has reached choice, if he takes immediate decision, then he goes to action. And if he doesn't take immediate decision, then he goes to resolution. Then there is a room for resolution, that he will work later on it. So the things have been decided and everything has been done on mental level, but the action is postponed, but the action is planned for future, that will be performed in the future. This is called your resolution. But if it is decided, the choice is taken and it has been decided, then takes action. Then comes the bodily level. This is the mental process of your desire, this of voluntary action. And of course, voluntary action have motives. Voluntary action has motive as well as the intention. So we will discuss motive and intention later on. Right now we have discussed. Right now, just we have to move the second aspect. So mental stage we have done, and now the second thing of this one is the bodily stage. So at the bodily stage, what is this? This is known as bodily stage. Okay, on bodily stage there is nothing new. On bodily stage there is nothing new, except on a bodily stage there is nothing new. It's nothing but action. So once the decision is taken, then action takes its own course. No, then action takes its own course. Then body takes the action immediately. So once it is decided on the mental level, then body takes its own, then body performs. Then the performance of body begins, and that's a matter of decision. But if decision is taken and it is postponed, so that's the kind of resolution. Then there will be no action. So after decision, you have to see whether there is a room for resolution or not. So if there is a decision for immediate action, then action takes place. If there is a room for resolution, then there will be no action. Okay, and fine. So this is the bodily stage, nothing more than that. And the third stage is known as, this is the second stage of your voluntary action. And now the third stage we know, and third stage is known as the external stage. What is external stage? Just try to understand. And this external stage, in fact, there are, there's few things in external stage. If action is done, so there is either the motive is achieved or unachieved. Either the desired goal is achieved or unachieved. So there is a desired goal. Now either this desired goal is achieved, it is achieved, or it is unachieved, achieved, or it is unachieved. So, and even either it is what is achieved is desirable or undesirable, that's another thing, So there is only a consequences. So first thing, there is a consequences, it is known as a consequences. So always there are the consequences are maybe desirable or undesirable, pleasurable or unpleasurable, or both. So the consequences, either it may be similar to your anticipated foreseen end, or it is contrary to anticipated foreseen end. That's another thing, but there will be consequences. So either there will be a satisfaction or there will be no satisfaction. If there is satisfaction, then fine. Now the in one word, better to say consequences will be there. So and consequences, takes place in external world. So consequences will be there, and this consequence takes place in external world, and that's why it is known as external stage. Now that's another matter whether the consequences are satisfactory or unsatisfactory, pleasurable or miserable, that's a different thing. But this is the third stage of consequence. This is your voluntary action. This is known as a voluntary action. And now before voluntary action, we have to understand, now we have to move to this desire, and after desire we will discussing, see the desire. Now we are coming on desire itself. Now this desire, want is converted into desire. Desire is a mental process. But the first thing, desire has, the certain end. It has a certain end, and it has a certain definite end. Certain end or definite end. It has a certain end, definite end, and it's a conscious decision. It's a conscious decision. Conscious decision, and okay, and it has three aspects. This desire has three aspects. What are these three aspects? Cognitive, affective, and cognitive. Try to understand. Cognitive, it has three aspects. Cognitive and affective and cognitive. Cognitive means it has a definite object. It has a definite object, end or object, end or object. Why we call it by both name? If it is actual, then there will be object, and if it is ideal, then there will be an abstract idea, object. So there must be an end, a certain end. So that's the cognitive state. And at the cognitive state, we also examine it. Also, there is also anticipated. There is anticipated object. It is better to say anticipated. Anticipated foreseen end. You know, foreseen. Anticipated foreseen end or foreseen object, whatever you say. And even the kind of, so this is the only a cognitive aspect. And of course the consequences, and of course all the things, consequences, means, ends, all the things have been thought over this particular point, cognitive. So over here the consequences, it thinks there must be, you know, the realization of consequences, and there is definitely the realization of motive, and there must be realization of intention. So it is also, you know, the end as well as the means. He realized the end as well as the means at the level of deliberation, because at the level of deliberation, he does not only examine the end, he also examines the means, how it can be attained, and what kind of problems will be there, and what will be the consequences. So when there is a deliberation, when there is a being of motives, different motives, then he examines also the means. So that's a complete examination of the whole course of the action, the complete examination of a complete action. Okay, so and on an affective level, what is on affective level? On affective level, you know, there is again there is a kind of satisfaction, you know, this is a kind of feeling, and it's a kind of feeling, and the first thing is miserable feeling when it is level of want. This is kind of crying, this is kind of craving, this is kind of thirst, hungry, this is kind of hunger, you know. But what happens? But there is also feeling of realization of the end. So there is a good feeling. There is also a good feeling of realization of anticipated end. So there is also a feeling of realization of anticipated end. That is the affective aspect of any desire. If it is not there, then, you know, there will be no driving force. This is source of inspiration. For example, you are preparing for civil services and you want to be an IAS officer only because that you have a kind of, you know, the thought, you have the kind of thought, you have kind of imagination, you have anticipated the kind of satisfaction you will get after being an IAS officer, after becoming an IAS officer. When you will be an IAS officer, then, you know, you will have a power, prestige and all that. So you have a kind of sense, the feeling, and that feeling is, the more you have, more intense the feeling you have, the more driving force is there. If the less intense, it depends on the proportion of your, you know, proportion of your feeling. There is a direct proportion, directly desire and your action are directly proportionate. If there is desire is directly proportionate with this affective feeling. If there is a great feeling kind of thing, then there will be a great kind of, you know, the desire. The more kind of satisfaction is there, the disparity depends. If disparity is there, if there is a disparity between your actual state of affair and imagined state of affair, then definitely, and if it is inspirational, that's why the affective is only, disparity is not important. Important thing is also the inspiration, the kind of the satisfaction after accomplishing the end. If you have a feeling of, if you have a good feeling, imagination of a good feeling after the accomplishment of your end, then you will, then this such a feeling, such a positive feeling will attract you, will drive you. So this is affective feeling, affective or affective aspect, and the third one is conative. Conative, conative is a matter of action. It's a matter of action. It's a matter of action. What happens? Conative is, if there is, it's a matter of knowing, and it's a matter of feeling, and it's a matter of willing. Now will into, this is willing, and now the will, and as you know, the will is defined as when self is in action. That's why your will is defined as self in action, not deliberation. Difference between deliberation and will. Very few of you know the difference between will and deliberation. The will is defined as self in action. In the very first lecture, if you can recall, the will is defined as the self in an action. So when self in action is known as the will. So this is the willing aspect. This affective, as usual, is the feeling aspect. This cognitive is as usual, it's a knowing aspect. So knowing, all three aspects are there: cognitive, affective and conative. And now we are going to discuss this. So we have discussed the desire. And now what is the relation of desire with the self? With the self and its character. So there is a relation of desire with the self and its character. Just try to understand the relation of desire with self and its character. And its character. That's it. So what is the first thing you have to understand? That there is a very intimate relation between self and desire. Desire, suits with the self. There is a harmony between self. So there is a harmony between self and a desire. So self chooses only those. Self has only those desire which is consistent with itself. Itself means with its character. So it has every self has a certain character. Every self has a character. So this character, so desire always, matches. Desire matches with its character. So that is why when desire has an object, so object has value for self. If there is a desire and desire has an object, for example, or end, so this object or end has a value. If it doesn't have value, then it doesn't desire, then desire will not be intense. So if desire has a particular object or a particular end, so the first self, it has a great value, it has a significance or value. If it has not a significance or a value of this object for the self, then there will be no desire. And so this object or this motive must be in harmony. Must be in harmony with the self, with its character, whether you call it with self or you call it with its character. So there must be a harmony between both of them. So this is our, the relation of desire, and either of the way you can write this relation of the self with desire. But it's okay. So now this is next thing we have discussed, and after that we have to discuss the inverse of desire. But before going to discuss the inverse of desire, let me discuss want, appetite and desire. A very small thing, but it is also needed sometimes. Want, appetite, and desire. Desire we have discussed, it has been discussed already. Now what is want? Want is a kind of, you can take in your example, you can take in your mind the example of plants. So plants have the want. This want is just organic want, and plants are blind. So they are unconscious. So their wants are blind. So their wants are blind because plants are unconscious. Generally, we call it unconscious. Yes, of course, the life is there, and it has been proven that they are, they can be considered living beings. Plants have also life, even the seeds have life, even there is a, they respire, all the things, but the point is they are considered as unconscious. So they are considered as unconscious, and if they are considered as unconscious, then their desire is blind, their want is blind, their want is blind, and that's why their roots strikes the soil, and to suck the nutritions from the soil, and there is no feeling kind of thing, and their branches also spread out in desire of the sufficient light, air, and all that. So light and air, of course, and space, of course. So this is the demand, and according to light, according to the direction of light, their branches moves, So this is the kind of want. It's a definition of want, and it's organic want, it's nothing but organic. It's nothing but organic, and want, and after then it comes your appetite. What is appetite? As you know, animals have the appetites, and animals, they have appetite. Their want is converted because they are conscious beings. So they are conscious beings, and because they are conscious beings, so they have a vague idea. They have a vague idea of their objects, vague idea about their end. Not very clear, but at least they know. But at least they have a vague idea about the object. Which kind of object will satisfy his need, his demand, they know more or less, and that's why they live their life successfully. And of course their life is based on instincts, so life is driven by the instincts, and this instinct fulfill their appetites, and so appetites are fulfilled through instincts. Their actions are instinctual, and instinct, and we are not going to discuss what is instinct, and still that instincts are more powerful than rationality. Instincts are more, and if you want to discuss in short, just just right. Instincts are certain. There are few instincts in animals, but they are certain. They know their food, mate, and shelter. These three things are very important: food, mate, and shelter. These are the natural appetites. Food is required, and mate is required, and food, mate, and shelter is also required during when newborn, at the time of newborn, at the time of, you understand, So all three are needed, and every day they need shelter. So these three things are, and they attain it successfully. Most of them attain it successfully. So, and their action is instinctual, as you know. So their action is instinctual. This is appetite. Want, want is just in a plant, and that's blind, but it's not blind. It's a vague idea. So, and they are conscious beings, so we cannot say it's blind, no. So they are conscious, and yeah, then comes your desire, and desire is run by your, desire is decided by, this is in a men, are human beings, and they are conscious being, of course. They are not only conscious but self-conscious also. So they are self-conscious, conscious and self-conscious. And and so they have a certain object, they have a definite object. They have definite object or definite end. So they have definite object or definite end, and and that's a conscious decision. That's a conscious decision, and this decision is taken through reason. So only men have a desire. So we have discussed the want, appetite, and desire, and now we are going to discuss the inverse of desire. Just try to understand. Now we are going to discuss the inverse of desire. Inverse of desire. Try to understand. What is inverse of desire? The inverse of desire, always everyone has a kind of desire. Everyone, every self lives in a kind of many desires. So when you think about something, you have a lot of desire. Every day you imagine so many things. Every day an individual imagines so many things. So that is known as inverse of desire. Inverse of desire means the set of desire. So set of desire is known as inverse of desire. Set of desires. And this set of desires, the very interesting thing is, the man does not always lives in same state of affair. So it depends, this set of desire depend on state of mind. It depends on state of mind. In what kind of state of mind he lives. If when his state of mind is changed, he switches over from one inverse to another. So from one inverse to another, according to their mood. It depends on his mood. State of mind means mood. It depends on his mood. So when his mood changes, he goes from one inverse of desire to another, and then he lives in another inverse of desire. He imagines so many things concerning that particular, that particular object or that particular end. So, and he does not, the thing is, he is not always in the same inverse of desire. But one thing is very sure. One thing is very sure, whenever he takes any decision, his desire is never isolated. So the phenomena of desire is never isolated. It's never isolated. It definitely belongs to any inverse of desire. It must belong to inverse of desire. And this inverse of desire is according to self, matches with his character. So, and yes, no matter what kind of decision he takes, and what decision and what desire he attracts, attracts him. The thing is, but this particular desire belongs to a inverse of desire, his inverse of desire, his own inverse of desire. This is the thing. So this is your inverse of desire. What we have to understand it? We have to understand it that every desire belongs to inverse of desire. It's not an isolated phenomena. No, it's not isolated phenomena. That's the thing. And let me go ahead. Let me move further. And now we are going to discuss. We have discussed the inverse of desire. And the next after that, what we should understand, what we should discuss, the inverse of desire, how we take decision. That is the voluntary action, decision, desire. We have discussed, and now we will discuss the motive and intention. Okay. But before going to motive and intention, let me discuss a very short thing, very small thing. Wish, will and desire. Just try to understand. Wish, will, wish, will and desire. Try to understand what is wish, what is will and what is desire. Desire we have discussed already. Now the question is what is wish? When we discuss, when you know wish, what is wish? Wish is one single dominant desire. For example, one can wish that I could have purchased such a beautiful car. I could have purchased such a precious, this object, piece of object. If I can purchase such a big house. So this is kind of one single dominant desire. Wish is always one single. Try to understand. One single dominant desire. This is one single dominant desire. But this one single dominant desire doesn't work. If wishes would have says that's why there is a proverb in English, and there is a very meaningful proverb in English. If wishes were horses, the beggars would ride. You understand? Again I repeat, if wishes would horses, then beggars would ride. And if wishes, okay, that's not needed, that's not needed. So if wishes would horses, then beggars would ride. Let me complete it. It wishes would horses, then beggars would ride. That's the thing. If wishes would horses, then beggars would ride. So what does it mean? It means wishes are a single dominant desire that doesn't put into action. What is will then? And as you know, will is in self in action. Will has been defined. So will is in a self in action. So will is a desire, dominant desire of inverse. It's a dominant desire of inverse. So it's a dominant desire of inverse. So that's a dominant desire of inverse, and it works. It is in a practice. It works. Understand? It is in a practice. It works. So that this is in a practice. It works. Will is in a self in action. That's the will. And as far as the desire is concerned, we have discussed it already. We have taken this one. We have discussed already. So now this is will, wish and desire, and after that now we are moving to study your character and conduct and motive and intention, and of course the circumstances. So before going to all of them, let us discuss first the motive and intention. Just try to understand the motive. What's the motive all about? The motive is derived from the root. As you know, that motive means which moves on, which moves, cause of motion. which moves on, means cause of motion. Cause of motion. So when you say cause of motion, okay, so say definitely it's a efficient cause, but it is also a final cause. If you take it as a, so first thing we can define it as a final cause, motive, final cause. When you say final cause, then when we define it as a final cause, it means end, the particular definite end, object. But it is also efficient cause because it moves, it's a spring of action. So it also can be defined as the efficient cause. So when you define it as efficient cause, this is, this when you define it as efficient cause, yes, it's a spring of action, cause of a spring of action. And when you define it as a cause of a spring of action, just try to understand. The cause of a spring of action, if you define, then it will be the efficient cause. And if it is taken as the cause of only end, as well as the means, as well as the cause of motion, if it is taken as both. So the Bentham is a person, Bentham is a man who have defined it as the only end. So Bentham and Mill both have defined it as, the pleasure is the only motive. For Bentham and Mill, pleasure is the only motive. This is the only motive of human action, because it's man who always in search of pleasure. So he hardly makes any difference between, the spring of action and end of action. This is a pleasure, what the man is always seeking about. So man is always in every action, as far as the motive is concerned, as far as the ultimate end is concerned, is nothing but the pleasure. So pleasure is the driving force. Later on with hedonists, we will try to understand that it is defined as a pleasure, but this viewpoint is not correct. Why this viewpoint is not correct? Because it's not only pleasure is always not the, pleasure cannot be accepted as a driving force. In many other impulses, we know there is no pleasure, but there is a different kind of satisfaction, because there are various kind of satisfaction. So that's why the pleasure alone cannot be defined as a motive, first thing. And second thing, also Bentham and Mill have committed mistake that he has taken the motive as the only subject of the judgment, but that's wrong. So that's wrong. But right now, this motion, this is your motive. And what is intention then? So commonly we can say that motive has an end. That's it. And now what is intention then? Okay. So what is intention? So once you see this intention, okay, so when we say that what is about intention? Intention is always wider than the motive. It's wider than the motive. As you know, a motive has only end, and intention has end as well as means. So it has end as well as means. So it includes both. And later on we will be able to understand whether the motive alone is a means of means of morality, examination of morality, or the means is also subject to examination. So now end and the means both are, we will be discussing with the moral judgments, when we will discussing the right now, just we have to take only the definition of motive and intention. And motive you have understood, I think, is a particular definite end or a certain object, and it has also a means, the ways and the means how it can be attained, how it can be achieved, how it can be acquired. So intention is a motive as well as the means, end as well as the means. Okay, this is your intention, motive and intention. And now we have to go to your character and conduct. Just try to understand character and conduct. What is character? Okay, before going to character, let me discuss conduct. As we know, the conduct is the outer expression of its outer expression of character, and character is the inner, and what is character is inner bent of mind, inner bent of mind, or also we can say that inner counterpart of conduct, inner counterpart of inner counterpart of conduct, counterpart of conduct, you know. So this is outer expression. So both are almost like two aspects of a same coin. Okay, and now what is conduct? Conduct is nothing but the action which have been already thought in our mind. So all the process are done in mind, and that is expressed through the body. That's known as the character is a matter of mind, and the conduct is a matter of body. And one is internal aspect, another is external aspect. And an interesting thing is Herbert Spencer is a person who says, Spencer is a man who says that continuous adjustment. What is conduct? According to him, the conduct is continued adjustment. It's a continuous adjustment between what? Adjustment with internal relation to external, with internal relation to external relation. Internal relations to external relations. Just try to understand external relation to internal relations. But this is also not explanation like Bentham, as Bentham has described the motive alone. Similarly, your Herbert Spencer's viewpoint is also not correct. Why not correct? It's erroneous, it's fallacious. Why? Because the external relation continues, because conduct is not only the adjustment of internal relation to external relation. No, conduct has a choice, conduct has a decision, conduct is not only adaptation, it's not only adaptation, conduct has a choice. And so there is, the choice and deliberation, there is a complete process. It's not only making, that's why later on we will see that when Herbert Spencer defines the right conduct is which has exact adaptation, but later on we will discuss. Right now just the conduct is not only adaptation with the nature, no, because we are not only a biological being, we are also a rational being, and we are also moral and spiritual being. We have certain end, we have not only the physical end. So every phenomena cannot be described in scientific manner. cannot be described only as a biological phenomena. We have some mental phenomena also. So at the same time, every phenomena, as every human phenomena, every human activities cannot be described as biological. Similarly, every mental process cannot be defined as psychological. So man has body, mind and soul. Soul means consciousness. Consciousness means it has some ideals. And everyone has ideal. It's at a prima facie, it seems difficult to accept, but we do have. But later or sooner, we will be, we will be able to accept it, that we have some ideals. And these ideals are not always actual. These ideals are always ideals, these ideals are not always, ideal itself is not actual. That's it. So we have some certain ideals. So this explanation cannot be accepted. This is conduct. So we have discussed character and conduct. And finally, lastly, just try to understand circumstances. And before going to what is character, let me discuss one more thing, conduct, and then come on character. Okay. We are forgetting character. No. See, character. Character, when we are discussing the character, first thing is the habitual bent of mind. It's a habitual way of willing. It's a habitual way of willing, and better to say it's a the habits of mental disposition. It's a permanent state of mind. It's a first thing, permanent state of mind. So first thing, permanent state of mind. Second, it's a mental disposition. It's a mental disposition. And second thing, it is acquired. That's very interesting. Just try to understand. It's acquired. It's acquired. It's not innate. We are not born with our character. We are born with our nature. So this is development of nature. I mean, nature is raw material. Everyone chooses according to one's own attitude. Its attitude, it makes character. And according to attitude, he takes something. He regulates some impulses and emotions of his nature under the supervision of reason. So it's a regulation of emotions and impulses of a self by its reason. In order to attain a character, in order to acquire character. So it's a repeated action, decided action. Once the decided action is done repeatedly, if there is a repetition, continuous repetition, then it becomes a habitual way of feeling. So it's a habitual way of feeling. Habitual ways of feeling. So this is your character. And the very interesting thing, it's not nature. There is a difference between individuality and personality. So your character makes personality. This is source of personality. Just try to understand. Yeah, it makes personality, and it's a source of individuality. you know, and yeah, it's a source of individuality. It's not a source of your personality. Individuality is natural and personality is acquired. That's a character. And one more thing, two more things. One, the same person is not always in same characters. The same man, character is also not permanent. Permanent state of mind, fine, but character itself is not permanent. Character itself is not permanent. Character itself is not permanent, you know. It's not permanent. It's a changing. The person can change its character. So character is not something which is fixed forever. No. So these are the things about the character. And conduct we have already discussed. And we have missed one important thing about your intention and okay, later on again we have to discuss motive and intention with moral judgments. In moral judgments again we will discussing your motive and intention in detail. So this is your character, and after that just try to understand. Last point is circumstances. Now the last important thing is circumstance. What is circumstance? Just try to understand. Circumstances are very important. Now very important means it also makes your, it has also a vital role in making your character. It has also a vital role in making character of an individual self. How it has vital? Partly the person when self performs the action, partly influenced by the character and partly by character and partly by circumstances. And partly by circumstances, you know. So character and circumstances both affects the action of a self. Both affects action of a self. So both have very important function. And what are the circumstances and how it affects? Of course it affects. Of course it makes a character. Of course it gives you choices, options, alternatives. Okay. So few things like, and what are the circumstances? Like natural resources. If when you are living, there is the natural resources. The presence of natural resources are also very important. So presence of natural resources are important. Like your soil, like your other thing. They have a vital role in making your character and making your decisions. So they influence your decision. And sometimes the situation of life is also very important. This is second thing. Situations are important. Situations of life is very important. Situation of life is very important. It also affects your decision. It also affects the decision of an individual. But the very important thing what has to be understood over here is that the same condition, sometimes in same situation and conditions, the same situation or the condition, two people are living and in same condition, same situation, but they can go to different decisions. They can move to different decisions. That's very interesting thing. And you have examined the exam, we have examined the case of your California, whereby the two children, two brothers of the same family, whose father was, he used to drink every day almost, and the conditions were very severe. but one said, one of them, two brothers were there. One became an engineer and went to America. Another was became a great, drinker. So what happened then when the media asked the question, somebody asked the question, not media, somebody asked the question, then what was the case? The same condition provoked both of them in a different direction. One said that the house of my condition, my economic conditions was worse, so it was severe poverty. So that's why I decided to read seriously, to first study seriously, and then finally I reached to this place. And another decided that my upbringing has been done in such an environment that I cannot learn except the wine, except the drinking. So it depends. And even in everyday life, we can take some other examples. The same poverty can provoke one into for activities of stealing and thieving, and one can be and the same poverty can provoke someone to become a rich man. So it depends on individual, and that's why that's why the circumstances differs, it differs with individuals. In case of individuals, it differs with individuals. Just try to understand. Depends on individuals. This is the thing, what I want to say over here. So individual, correct circumstances are defined on the basis of individual. The same circumstance may be positive for one and might be negative for another. So this is our psychological basis of ethics. We have learned what we have learned. The very first thing, moral and non-moral action. Then we have your voluntary action. A very small thing, habits we have ignored. Very small thing, habits, and most of the things we have discussed. And then character and conduct, motive and intention, want, appetite and desire itself, inverse of desire, relation of self with desire, and these are the things. So almost we have discussed some basics of your ethics, which are based in psychology, That's why they are known as the basis of psychological basis of ethics. And tomorrow we will be discussing, in our next lecture we will be discussing our moral concepts and then moral judgments. We'll try to discuss both of them, moral concepts and moral judgment. Okay, fine. Thank you for today, and it's enough for today.